One cannot claim to understand the West without coming to terms with Jesus or Yeshua. He's the single most crucial character in the shaping of Western culture. By any standard, Jesus or Yeshua is one of history's most fascinating, compelling, and elusive individual. Yes, Yeshua is a historical person, a real human being who lived in first century Palestine, and we can learn a lot about him through the eyes of history. However, the methods of history does not offer the best access to learn about him. Although history has its uses for studying Yeshua, it also has real limitations, and transgressing those limits has negative consequences. Serious historical analysis can provide substantial information concerning Jesus or Yeshua as a person who was executed by the Romans in the 3rd century. These historical conclusions are important even for believers who consider Jesus or Yeshua to be more than a historical figure. A major project of religious scholarship since the Enlightenment was the quest for the historical Jesus. I believe David Strauss's work, titled The Life of Jesus Critically Examined, was the first classic work in this historical quest. This search involved the pursuit of what was the earliest and least dogmatically tainted source available for Yeshua or Jesus. This meant sorting through the Gospels. The Gospel of John was thrown out immediately because it was obviously supernatural and theological. This left the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which in their view were obviously dogmatic. They saw Jesus or Yeshua as a divine figure. The pursuit therefore pointed to the Gospel of Mark as the earliest written gospel. Even with this finding, scholars were faced with an unsolvable internal contradiction. When they got to Mark, they discovered a very scary eschatological and apocalyptic figure from the ancient past. None of the Gospels portrayed the historical Yeshua or historical Jesus in a kind of neat, straightforward reporting. They are all dogmatic. Although the quest failed to find a historically satisfying Yeshua or Jesus, it did clarify the character of the Gospels. It became clear that the Gospels are not biographies. They are not histories. Rather, they are witnesses and interpretations. The historical Yeshua was regarded as a lost cause until the late 20th century, where a renewed hunt for the historical Jesus or Yeshua began by many devoted scholars. It is important to note that the first quest had relied virtually completely upon Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. What provoked this renewed search was the belief that new methods, materials, and models of investigation might yield new outcomes. I believe this was triggered by two very important discoveries, which gave quite a wide range of interpretations of Yeshua or Jesus. The Dead Sea Scrolls at Wadi Qumran, and even more important, the Gnostic Gospels at Nag Hammadi. Scholars at this point used a new method of investigation. Rather than trying to find the earliest gospel, the idea was to use techniques called source criticism and redaction criticism to get back to Jesus or Yeshua himself. Comparative anthropology was also used, which is based on the idea that a society or social system cannot be fully understood without comparing it with other societies or systems. For example, we analyze the lives of farmers in a certain culture, which may then aid in obtaining a fuller understanding of how the lives of farmers worked in another culture. This attempt also somewhat failed because people using the same models, materials, the same methods end up with a confusing variety of results. History has its use for studying Yeshua, and I think the better approach is to make use of history but engage the ancient sources as literature, rather than disassembling the Gospels in search of earlier sources. Approach them as literary productions and then engage the personage of Yeshua or Jesus that is presented in each Gospel. Take the Gospels and place their production in the historical, cultural, and religious settings of the Christian movement. Then take Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John and consider them in their social context, literary arrangements, in their portrayal of Yeshua or Jesus as many